of the last bull cycle, we saw the craze around NFTs. And at first it seems kind of silly, but the thing that really got my attention was the early product market fit. How it was able to form really strong communities, bring people together, and really just create a lot of excitement around this new asset class and technology. And so we started wondering, what could NFTs become in the future, right? They must be more than just a PFP on chain. And as we were exploring what sort of chain or technology would bring mass adoption, that's when we started learning about SUI and how this was going to be the perfect blockchain to build the future of NFT technology on. And so plenty of folks over the last few days have mentioned all of the benefits of SUI, so I'm going to skip that part and go a little bit more into how we are able to build a standard on top of SUI, extracting all of the benefits and the awesome tech that the Nissan team has built. All right, so this is just a very high-level journey of a typical NFT launch. We have creators, they want to launch an NFT, they'll get started with some metadata and some sort of configuration of what their collection should be. They go through the mint process, they'll mint the NFTs, work with a potential LAUNCHPAD partner in a marketplace or to launch themselves. And then you have the distribution to the initial buyers, to the primary sales, and then there's obviously going to be secondary sales. So at OriginByte, we kind of looked at this whole entire end-to-end process and see how we can build something that is going to be more robust. How are we going to learn the lessons from other ecosystems and see the challenges that they face and take that as an opportunity to sort of create a really healthy ecosystem for NFTs when SUI mainnet happens. And with that, we started thinking about, so I'll go in phases, right, over some of these different concepts. So the first thing we started thinking about was a design pattern that we thought would be extremely flexible, can offer maximum configuration and creativity to creators and developers, and also building it in a future-proof way where you can basically add utility to the NFTs as your project matures or as you find more utility and more use cases, which has been a challenge thus far, right? Like if you look at NFTs on other blockchains, they're very limited, and oftentimes creators are sort of stuck because they're not able to do more with NFTs. And sometimes they'll just launch another collection, right? And that dilutes the brand. And we feel like that's not really the best way to build products and services, right? So we stumbled upon or came up with an NFT design pattern that we call NFT domains. And what this allows us to do is this allows us to offer the creators the ability to configure their collections and have settings at the domain level, and then also have settings at the individual NFT level. Right? So these are not all the settings in Fields, by the way, but this just kind of covers some of the high-level stuff that we'll be launching with. So at the collection level, and even at the NFT level, the gray boxes are sort of like static metadata, and then the green are the areas where you can have behavior implemented in the collection. So we obviously have things like name, description, URL. We're working on a tagging system, which will make it really easy for marketplaces and wallets and other interfaces to categorize NFTs. Are they gaming, are they PFPs, or tickets? And then we also have these behavioral aspects such as royalty, right, which I'll be touching upon a little bit later in the presentation. You can define composability rules and sort of, define how NFTs can come together, perhaps in a game between a weapon and a suppressor or a sticker, and the creators and the game studios can kind of define those rules at the time of creation. There's NFT templates, lists, some of these things, concepts will be discussed in the coming slides. And then the same thing, at the individual NFT level, you can have things like owner modifiable. I think we're going to have to find a better word for that. But basically, what that means is the owner of the NFT can upgrade certain things. The creators, when they're configuring all of these things, they're not only defining the metadata, but they're sort of defining the future of this collection. And that involves decision-making around the permission system, right? So we believe there needs to be a very transparent and clear way where the creator has configured the collection, where they can define early on what things can be changed and what cannot be changed, right? So some of the patterns here are at the NFT collection management level, you can have a collection that's just immutable. You can't change it once it launches, and that's it, right? Or you can have a combination of things that will impact how NFTs can be upgraded later on. And that could be based on the creator. So the creator can decide to upgrade certain fields, but they'll be able to identify exactly what fields they would be able to update. So there's a lot of specifics that get involved at the time of the launch. And I think this is great for creators or buyers who are going to be able to see what parts of the NFT collection might change in the future. Then the owner, so the owners can upgrade their NFTs in the future if they want to, or if that is given the permission to be so. The creator and the owner are coming together and both agreeing that there's going to be an upgrade to the NFT. Think of this as like an NFT collection having a brand partnership. How would that partnership actually be implemented, right? Like how will these NFTs be composed together? And that's where this permission system is going to define the rules of that behavior. And this will also include perhaps licensing agreements. So when the creator is initially launching a collection, what kind of license are they going to basically attach to the collection? And is that changeable? Is that not changeable? So these kind of things are going to be very important. And then lastly, it's actually pretty open-ended, right? You can have oracles come and upgrade NFTs. So an example is Oracle says, hey, it's raining outside. It can come in, upgrade the NFT, point to a different URL that has a background with raindrops or something like that. Right? So there's a world of possibilities that get unlocked with this. And for all of this, we're basically using a lot of the dynamic fields that SUI has built in natively. And then we have the NFT distribution management, where creators can decide to launch the collection themselves. They can delegate responsibilities to marketplaces or other third parties. So there's a ton of flexibility around the permissioning system. When we look at NFT distribution, as we get to the next phase of the life cycle, we've identified at least three that are relevant. So one is an airdrop. If you wanted to basically airdrop a collection, you mint it and you airdrop it immediately to a bunch of addresses. If that's what we want to do, then we would sort of go with the airdrop module. We have concepts like on-demand minting. So if you want to mint NFTs within a game on the fly as the users want them, or domain names, then that's where on-demand minting comes in. And the LAUNCHPAD is a very traditional sort of launch where you can mint NFTs and sell them once everything is minted. Within the launch mechanisms, we've identified two types, right? So there's the typical mint where you can, let's say, mint a collection of 10,000, 15,000, put it in a LAUNCHPAD in a warehouse, and then basically distribute it from the warehouse simultaneously or through some sort of mechanisms that we'll be discussing in the next slide. Or you can have a factory. So the difference between the warehouse is everything gets minted, put in a warehouse, and then people just basically bulk buy it or gets distributed. Whereas the factory is the creator defines the metadata, and then users can go and basically on-demand mint NFTs. So that's sort of like the two different patterns that we'll be providing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out one of the reasons why this is so powerful is because you can sort of mint at mass scale. And when you're playing a game, the game studio doesn't necessarily know how much activity it's going to have on its game, right? So like it's unpredictable how many NFTs they're going to be circulating within that game environment. So it gives flexibility for game studios to not have all the cost upfront for minting and also the mass scalability, because you're not like just minting without metadata.
Exactly. The LAUNCHPAD is actually, it gives you a lot of different options and gets rid of like the boring launches that we've seen when it comes to NFTs. And this is just like an example of the combination that we've come up with, but it could be very different than this, right? So you can have inventories that are sitting in different warehouses, and then they have different ways of distribution. Or you can put all the inventory in one warehouse, and then you can have multiple marketplaces selling those inventories, right? And then those inventories can further be defined. Are they going to be sold to whitelisted buyers? Are they going to be sold to regular buyers? So there's just a world of configuration options that are now going to be available to creators and marketplaces where they can define how the launches happen. They can even have different sales mechanisms, right? So you can sell a bunch of the inventory to a fixed price. You can also do auctions on another part of the inventory. So it just gives you a lot of options and can make launches a bit more fun and adds other dynamics to this as well. Some of the extra features around the Launchpad, I may have touched on some of these concepts, but the number one is how do we parallelize NFT mints and sales? This is where Sui is extremely powerful. Right? And some of the folks have mentioned things like single writer objects, things like batch transactions. So imagine having to mint 100,000 NFTs, 500,000 NFTs. Like, how are we going to get to that scale? That's really what we're trying to do here with OriginByte, to maximize the benefits that Sui offers and enable creators, game companies, other kind of products and services to be able to just mint in mass without having any bottlenecks and bringing the chain down, right? Like, we don't want to sort of have the same issues that we've seen on other blockchains. There's tiered whitelisting. Whitelisting can once again get extremely creative. We can create certain quests and different categories and break them down. There's this really cool concept of dynamically controlling bots. So we want to have a healthy distribution of sales to bots and folks that are going to be buying manually, right? So you can define that inventory early on, at the time on. You can say, all right, well, 50% goes to bots, 50% goes to folks that are just clicking, like crazy to try to mint NFTs. But you can also dynamically update this as the sale is happening. So this is going to be extremely interesting, where creators can now do a launch, and as they're launching, while the sale is happening, within the 60 seconds of the craziness where everything gets sold out, they can adjust things if they want to. If they want more bots to participate because there's not a lot of manual buyers, they can turn a knob and enable that.
Yeah, and I think like one of the reasons why programmatic access to Launchpad is also important is because you need a certain amount of liquidity you need like bots to come in and act as wholesalers for the secondary market.
Fees can be configured as well on these launches. Marketplaces can charge fees, obviously. That's going to be important. On the fly minting of loose NFTs, this is a little bit on the factory design that we shared, so you can just have people coming in on demand, just minting whatever they want to mint. And some of the topics and areas that we're looking to implement are going to be things like loot boxes, NFT packs, and some really cool and interesting stuff. All right, so I mentioned early on a little bit about the royalty protection, but as we were thinking about launching these standards, we saw a lot of chaos and infighting in certain ecosystems. And that was because the standards were not built in a robust way from day one, right? As we've built OriginByte, we spent a lot of time thinking about royalty protection. It's something that I feel really strongly about, even though I'm not a creator. Since the early days of blockchains, we've been telling creators that we're going to get rid of middlemen, and you're going to be getting royalties directly to you, right? And then, as soon as we started getting product market fit, NFTs started to sort of really become mainstream. We started to have products and bad actors that were then undercutting royalties. So we take that extremely seriously, and we've come up with a design that works for us at this stage, but we personally believe that this is going to be an evolution, right? So based on the solutions that we can build today, this is how we would do it, and I'll walk you through it in a bit. I know there's a lot of arrows and boxes, but in the future, as we get more ideas with better technology, better innovation, we'll continuously update this. But the idea is simple here. So we are having buyers and sellers coming together. They want to buy NFTs and they want to enforce royalties. One of the things that creators get to define at the collection level is this allow list. The allow list basically means that the creator can say, okay, these sorts of contracts can interact with this NFT, and they're going to ensure that the allow list is the one is going to consist of trading contracts, marketplaces that are going to impose royalties. So this gives them the optionality to always be able to go back if there are bad actors that are not following royalties. The creator can always just update the allow list to something else. And there can be community consensus around this, there can be social pressure around this, and so we're starting off with an approach where we give creators the options of how strict they want to be and how they would like to impose royalties. The second thing, which we'll be talking a bit more about, is this liquidity layer. The liquidity layer that we're building, first of all, it's a public good for the entire ecosystem. And this liquidity layer is going to have different types of smart contracts that when a trade happens, if the trade is going to be 100 SUI, the liquidity layer layer that we've built, we know is honest. So it will always say, hey, it was for a transaction of 100 sui, and therefore this is the royalty that must be paid. There's no way to like spoof the price or have the price show up as like 1 sui, and therefore you're paying royalty, but you're not really paying royalty on the real amount of the transaction. So we've had to think about the entire sort of package and bringing everything together from the royalty protections that allow this liquidity layer, and then bringing the buyers and sellers together to enforce that everything is built in a way that we cannot bypass royalties. A bit more on the liquidity layer. One of the things we've noticed is around NFT marketplaces or in general, we often take Web 2 business models and we're applying them directly as they are in Web 3. And we feel like Web 3 is an area where we need to come in and start thinking about first principles again. And perhaps we break down business models and reconstruct them in what's possible in Web 3. So in Sui, we imagine an ecosystem for NFTs where there's a base level of liquidity, and then marketplaces can all tap into that liquidity. And therefore, it gives a really good user experience. NFT liquidity is going to be shared across marketplaces, and it actually helps the buyers at the end of the day. And marketplaces will be able to set their fee structure on top of this. And we're working with all of the top marketplaces who are defining the best standards around this. The goal, once again, is to be able to go to Mainnet with a system that is going to be healthy, that will encourage innovation, and also encourage commerce. We completely are not in favor of 0% marketplace fees, wash trading, royalty protections, not enabled. That has to stop, right? And I think that is going to be extremely important in bringing in more creators, not just because they're excited about Sui in general, but and with all the utility, but the fact that they're going to have all these protections available to them at the beginning when we go live with Mainnet. And the liquidity layer is going to consist of a central limit order book. We've already launched that. We've taken the concept of how a fungible token order book works and tweaked it a little bit to sort of fit how NFT trading happens. And then it's also going to consist of certain kind of auction contracts like Dutch auction, English auction. And for NFTs that are a bit more generic, like in-game assets, 100,000 of them that are you're not too picky about, it's a perfect place to use the cloud. If you want to use and buy and sell assets that are more exclusive, more rare, then you'll have access to a lot of different auction contracts for that. Developer experience. So creator experience is important, but so is developer experience. We've barely just scratched the surface and tried to condense a lot of these topics for this presentation, but you can imagine there is a lot of different, again, configuration options, creativity options, and so educating developers, giving them the right tools is going to be important to get adoption. So a few things that we're working on is, one is a CLI tool for deploying and managing collections. It's very simple, it's just a Q&A, ask 2 questions, you can answer them and launch your collection within like minutes. We're also building SDKs and APIs on top of this protocol. And then transitioning a little bit into the gaming side. At OriginByte, the stuff that we're building is going to enable all kinds of applications and user experiences. However, we want to focus in the early days on the gaming industry. We believe gaming industry is going to be really, really massive. It's a $200 billion industry growing at 13%, and Web3 gaming is growing at 70% year over year, right? This is going to be a huge space. And so we've been thinking a lot about how we can give all of the power of Sui with OriginByte and giving game developers the comfort to work within their comfort zone. So that includes things like gaming, Unity SDKs, Unreal SDKs, educational content, and sort of giving them a place to start. So what's next? Before I actually talk about what's next, I do want to mention that we are working with pretty much, I would say, 95, if not 100% of the marketplaces building on Sui. Everybody is integrating OriginByte for the reasons that you went over in the previous slides. We are working with some of the top creators that are looking to utilize dynamic NFTs for their collections. We're talking to a variety of games and game studios that are interested in the Unity SDK and other products that we've launched. And so we've been getting a lot of inbound interest, and hopefully we continue to sort of update our documents and create more tutorials. And the next stage for us at OriginByte is, first of all, make sure that NFT protocol is tested, automated, ready for mainnet, with our partners building on it, but also what we can do now in the next phase as a gaming protocol. How can we build different kind of primitives and products that utilize all of this NFT tech and implement it for game studios? Up until now, I feel like gaming and what people is all about just, hey, NFT in a game that's just owned by the user and that's it. With Sui, we can do a lot more, of course, right? With on-chain game states, with dynamic fields, it's just a world of opportunity that's unlocked. So there's more that we're going to be releasing on the gaming side, and DeadBytes is actually a tiny sort of experiment that we did. We wanted to build a game on top of our own Unity SDK to just be our own customers in a way. So the intention is not to become like some top-notch AAA game, but more so find out the bottlenecks and challenges as we go along, and then provide this as content and tutorials for other game devs that come into the space to see how they can utilize the protocol and see it in action as a tutorial, as an example. Yeah, so we wanted to cover everything through the presentation. We were contemplating doing the demo, but we figured it would be really hard to cover so many different topics if we got too technical. So, I don't know if you want to add something that I may have missed.
No, I just wanted to add one thing in relation to the algorithms. So, one of the ways we also think of it is this primitive allows traders to take like let's say a less advanced approach. So they can basically allow for all trading contracts to to integrate their collections, and as soon as there's anything that they're not respecting when it comes to work protection, you can just pull the plug on for example. So that provides like enough incentive for actors not to engage like in ways that would sort of destroy their protection, because the creator can automatically put it out. So no one's going to build something that is just going to yield profits for a week.
The standards have been built in a way where we're not locking people into a box, right? You can build on top of these. You can have your own royalty schemes and just get as creative as you want. You can have your own composability rules on top of it. The goal is to support others' work and be able to sort of integrate and allow them the benefit of everything else that we've built, right? So if you're launching your own custom logic on top of our protocol, we actually encourage that. And it's still going to be compatible with the liquidity layer, with the LAUNCHPAD, and things like that. So it's a lot of room for innovation and for others to come and build on top of this, add to the protocol, and contribute to the ecosystem overall. I think that covers it from our end. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
By the way, we have very cool t-shirts here, thanks to the studio, alright? So, whoever so shout out this t-shirt. This is gonna be like the OG, you guys been to the beginning, like 3 main heads. Whoever has questions, there you go.
Yeah, any questions? Yes.
I'm curious what the sort of onboarding process for a creator wanting to create one of these interactive NFTs will look like. I'm a dev, but I know a lot of artists that are very interested in what you guys are building, so I'm curious how to convey this to them.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a huge area for us in the coming months. We're already setting some ideas around no-code and low-code experiences. Because to your point, right, like with these standards, creators can now have a lot of options to launch really cool things. And we believe it doesn't really have to be a case where they need to hire a developer, right, and then work with a developer to launch a smart contract, and then they have to worry about auditing that smart contract and where are the fees going to be going to. And so with the protocol itself, I think it's going to be easy to sort of, since we're designing all the complexity, we can also then build an interface that's simple and able to tap into all of the possibilities, right? So one thing we're thinking about is perhaps issuing some sort of like reports. When a creator, through a dev right now possibly, launches a collection, through the permissioning system, we can easily scan that and say, okay, this collection will allow the creator to change X, Y, and Z. Or this is how this collection has to be configured, which kind of doesn't exist, right? You just blindly buy stuff and then you figure out, well, not just the creator, but the protocol owner, can just update the metadata to whatever the hell they want, right? It's really scary stuff. So yeah, we're going to be thinking about the creator experiences. It's going to take us a while. As you can imagine, this is a lot of work that we've taken on, and the priority is to get first the marketplaces and the launchpads and the game studios to be ready for mainnet. But the next phase of this is certainly going to be about how we make it easier for creators. A lot of the no-code tools on other chains are also not going to be a good fit here due to the fact that Sui does offer a lot. Right? So how do you build a no-code experience tapping into all of the benefits that Sui offers?
Yeah, so I wanted to add just one thing. So we actually built like a CLI that allows you to create your own collections and create your own collections. Create your own collections and add on features to it, like composability and multi-messages and whatnot. And we can also generalize that into an API that marketplaces use. So that way we can just add the API to create directions on the fly. And part of that as well is not just creating, but also like managing. Oh, you have?
Oh, large.
Yeah.
Amazing.